race to the end zone. Touchdown, Deion Sanders.
And we believe, everybody out here believes.
I didn't fly down here to watch Primetime lose a game.
And I'm so darn proud of where we started from and where we are today.
Don't call it a comeback.
Coach Prime said it. The SWAC is back. HBCU ball is back. Let's go.
The reemergence of the HBCU football continues. After decades of being out of the national conversation, Jackson State University showed up and showed out with ESPN's Game Day on campus and the eyes of the sports world squarely on the Tigers this past weekend. So we have HBCU Hall of Famer and former first-round pick Hugh Douglas here to talk about the resurgence in the SWAC that Coach Prime, a.k.a. Deion Sanders, helped kickstart. Plus, Tennessee's comeback season has them primed for a huge matchup with Georgia next weekend. And does Tom Brady regret his comeback season?
From Wondery, I'm Shek Shazier.
I'm Dameshek.
And this is Don't Call It a Comeback.
Don't call it a comeback. I've been waiting on this moment my whole life. Can't call it a comeback. Everybody to your feet, make arenas rise. Yeah, I'm saying from the left to right, we get it on tonight. We do it all, but we don't back down. Just give me one shot, one chance, I'ma take it. Fixing up the game, but these records I keep on breaking.
All right, Shek, let's get into this Jackson State story.
Your wish is my command, 5-0. Yes, Coach Deion Sanders and Jackson State are leading HBCU football to a comeback on the national stage. It's been years, nay, decades, since schools like Jackson State had this much buzz and so many talented players. Coach Prime is leading the turnaround quickly since being hired just 2 years ago.
Time was Jackson State produced 4 Hall of Fame NFL players, including running back Walter Payton. But when Sanders arrived, not one Jackson State player had been drafted in 12 years.
Coach Prime quickly reignited Jackson State football with a huge recruiting victory, stealing a 5-star player from his own alma mater, Florida State.
Deion Sanders has flipped the #1 recruit in the nation to come to his spot at Jackson State.
HBCUs just started recruiting the 4- and 5-star players just recently because they never thought they could get them. Now they believe.
With Hunter now symbolizing a new era and other star players thriving, including his son, QB Deion Sanders, HBCU football looks like they're returning to being a home for the sort of Hall of Fame talent those schools had from the 60s into the 90s. That's when stars like Walter Payton and Doug Williams and Shannon Sharp, Terrell Owens, and Deacon Jones and Jerry Rice, those last two, both from Mississippi Valley State, 2 of the top 20 players in the history of pro football. But it's not just about talented players coming back to HBCU teams.
This is a big day. Thank you all.
Yeah, man.
Thank you all for bringing it here, man. This is all right.
This past weekend, ESPN's iconic College Game Day show visited JSU, making Jackson the epicenter of college football relevance. Deion was on set, and ESPN's biggest stars came to town, picking his team to win.
Jackson State, big time. Today, they take them out. Yeah. That's why I'm here. It's a new day, and it's called Primetime.
And surprise, surprise, JSU won big, improving to 8-0 on the season, with JSU and HBCU football in general dominating the headlines. That makes it time for us to welcome in Hugh Douglas. You listen to him in Atlanta on 92.9 The Game. Every morning, John and Hugh, 2-time All-American at Central State and an HBCU Hall of Famer who was drafted in the first round by the Jets in 1995 and became one of the Eagles' best pass rushers ever. How are you, Hugh? Welcome to the show.
What's going on, fellas? How y'all doing, man?
So, Hugh, what did it mean to HBCU football from where you sit in 2020 to see Jackson State hosting Game Day, as big as that show is to college football, to sports in general, and then on top of it, for Jackson State to show up and play the great game it had over the weekend?
Man, listen, I can't describe to you how much it means to everybody that went to a HBCU to see Deion Sanders doing what he's doing at a HBCU. I didn't go to Jackson State. I know a couple guys that did. Jimmy Smith went to Jackson State. I know Walter Payton went to Jackson State. It means a tremendous amount to a lot of us that went to HBCUs to see them on that level, to see Game Day there, to see Brian Pollock there, to see Harry Douglas there, to see all those people there represent HBCUs. Man, it did my heart. It did my heart justice, man. It made me feel really good. So
the culture shock was, I guess, delayed for you a little bit. Why is it? What's your math on why it's so much more difficult to come from an HBCU and break through and actually make an NFL roster?
The biggest thing is the size of the athlete that's going to a Power 5 school and the competition. You got a big game coming up this week, and you talk about Georgia, Tennessee. You know, you're talking about last week, Penn State and Ohio State playing against one another. Look across that interior line. Look on both sides of the ball, offense and defense. I played against guys in my school that on a good day, if you played against a tackle that was like 285 pounds, that was a good day. You're talking about, on average, a SEC line, 300 plus. You know, Ohio State line, 300 plus. You got linebackers and tight ends that look like offensive linemen. You know, the guys are just bigger across the board. They look like NFL players at each position. What's the guy name that plays for Ohio State now? Zach Harris, the big defensive end that plays on the other side. Yeah, Zach Harrison and those guys. Teron Vincent, Troy Vincent's son. Those guys are huge compared to what it was when I was coming out of college.
Do you suppose then that with College Game Day showing up at the campus there in Jackson, and with, listen, you're one of the success stories coming from an HBCU. Do you think that the more visual evidence you get that this is a reasonable path to go and you can still land as a pro football player, that you start to see more kids taking that choice, even though they maybe get an offer from a place like Ohio State?
I think it's going to be tough. And when you talk about NIL deals, you talk about facilities and things of that nature, it's going to be tough because when you look at most HBCUs, they don't look like Jackson State. They don't have Deion Sanders trumping in the calls for HBCUs. That's just not the case. Most schools look like the one that I went to, Central State University, where me and my alumni chapter, we're trying to give donations every week just so that we can have some lockers that we didn't have in the locker room that I played in, that I got dressed in. So that's what we're doing. It's not like that everywhere. So when you're showing a kid that, and they have an opportunity to go, say, to Ohio State, where every year they're refurbishing their locker room. Every year they get new weights in the weight room. Every year, like they're building a new nutrition bar over the old nutrition bar, and having all these different assets and things like that. It's going to be tough for a kid to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to go to this school, even though it's HBCU, and I'm going to struggle. But, you know, I'm going to struggle, but I might still go to the NFL. When you go, like, hell no. I got lockers with televisions in them with my name and bright lights across. You can't compete with that, man. It's hard to compete with. Really hard to compete with.
So, Hugh, one thing I want to ask you is, how do you feel that the HBCUs can make a comeback and can start making a change? Resources.
That's the biggest thing. Like when you look at Power 5 schools, you look at Alabama, look at Ohio State. Your facility, I could venture to guess that the cafeteria that you eat in by yourself is bigger than probably our whole weight room. Like we're trying to put a weight room in, and your weight room is probably bananas. You have every machine that you could possibly have cutting edge that's going to help make a difference in you being a better football player. It's not like that at most HBCUs. You know, you have your Gramblin's, you have your Southerns, and now you have your Jackson States. I love what Deion Sanders has been able to do for Jackson State, the kind of money that he's bringing to Jackson State, the kind of prestige that he's bringing them, the kind of coverage that he's bringing them. Man, listen, I see more people now talking about HBCUs now, today, than I've ever seen before. Even though I didn't go to Jackson State, I'm proud of him because now he's shining light on all the other HBCUs. And the bottom line is this. We're never going to be in the same boat as Ohio State or Alabama, anything like that. But every little bit that you give all these HBCUs, it helps tremendously because you would be surprised at how much we don't have compared to what they have at even smaller schools, even like a small school like Otterbein or something like that. It's just so different at most of these HBCUs. You would not believe how different it is.
I think the big question for me is then, and I hear exactly what you're saying, but if Deion is lured, or I suspect that, Auburn has a head coaching vacancy.
They just fired. Yeah.
Arizona State does. There's some Power 5 schools out there. What's to say Deion doesn't jump at one of those opportunities if it's offered, one? And two, if he does that end this comeback story for HBCUs basically right there?
You know what? That's a good question, and I can't answer that. Now, this is the thing that I wrestled with in the beginning when Deion came to Jackson State. A lot of people speculated the same way that you are, that he was going to be a guy that, uses this as a stepping stone. And at first I was a little bit upset about that. But at the end of the day, I'm like, okay, what makes Deion different than any other coach that is coached in college football? Look at Mel Tucker. Mel Tucker started out at Colorado, stayed there for a year, and then he bounced and went to Michigan State. And you look at all these other coaches that are bouncing around, taking jobs everywhere else. I can't be mad at him for that. Only thing I can do is applaud him and commend him for doing what he has done for HBCUs. He's put the spotlight on them. Now it's up to other people to carry the torch. It's up to other people to go out there and try to emulate what Deion has done. What Deion has done for HBCUs, I don't think will ever be done again, but he started something. He started something that has become a revolution. It's become a wave. And I think that if you play it right with all the people that now, since HBCUs are hot, if you take the money that's being given to you and the funding that's being given to you, you can turn these programs around, and Deion will be looked at as the catalyst.
Yeah, one thing I want to say, Hugh, is that I do agree with you. The thing is, I do think once a team like Auburn or a bigger school offers Deion a big contract, as any professional, most likely they're going to leave and take that opportunity. But there are other coaches like Eddie George out there and other big name coaches. So one thing that I do think that that Deion Sanders did do, he brought more light to the subject. So now people are going to be talking about it a little bit more and brought more fun into even the SWAC. Like they said, the SWAC is getting traveled around more with corporate airlines and things like that. So if he's already bringing that type of attention, now they might start getting better coaches. And if you get better coaches, then you might start getting better facilities and more boosters starting to put in on it. Right now, it's a lot going on, so everybody wants them to come back right now. But this might be a 10, 20, 15-year journey that it may take. But I feel that we're going to start talking about HBCUs a lot more now. I mean, a lot more in the future than we have in the last 20 years. Yeah,
you know what? I hope so. And I hope it doesn't take that long, Ryan, to be totally honest, because you look at what Deion has done in 3 years. Now, I haven't visited Jackson State myself. But when you look at some of the scenery around there, the facilities that he's put down there and everything, that all happened in like 3 years. That happened in a quick amount of time. And the fact that he's bringing all these sponsors, the fact that Michael Strahan is getting involved. See, that's the beautiful thing about HBCUs. It's not just Jackson State. It's all the HBCUs. And we try to support everybody, no matter what school you went to. You mentioned Eddie George. I reached out to Eddie a couple weeks ago. It was unfortunate. Before the season started, I was going to try to go to their spring game, but unfortunately for me, my son goes to Morehouse, so I went to his spring game and was trying to support him. But it's one of those things, man, where everybody that went to a HBCU has love for HBCUs, regardless if you went to that school or not. Like, I have love for Jackson State. As a matter of fact, when they were here in town last year, when they were playing in the bowl game, was trying to get some Jackson State swag. You talk about some hard swag to get. It's easier to get an Ohio State Buckeye shirt than it is to get a Jackson State shirt right now. I'm here to tell you.
Don't call it a comeback.
I think it's really interesting, sort of, you touched on it at the beginning, that maybe a little bit of cynicism about why is Deion Sanders exactly stopping here? Is it a stepping stone for him? And, by the way, to your point about what it's done for the campus, Jackson in general is a town that's looking for a little bit of a resurrection. Then political activism is on the rise on that campus as well. I don't know if that's a coincidence or owed in part to Deion Sanders providing a little more pride at the school and beyond. But what do you make then of the people who've remained a little cynical, including Eddie Robinson Jr., obviously to me, the face of Grambling football and HBCUs. Eddie Robinson kind of got into it with Coach Prime a little bit. What do you say to people who say that Prime ultimately isn't SWAC?
You can't be mad at what Deion Sanders has done for HBCU football. I know that Coach Robinson, all due respect, is very, very competitive. And he's a guy that's probably been in the game a long time, and a lot of coaches feel some kind of way because they've been on this grind forever trying to bring HBCUs to the forefront. Deion Sanders has done that with his brash arrogance, if you will, his confidence, whatever you want to call it. I love the fact that Prime is who he is, because who else can bring the message the way that Prime's bringing it and bring the arrogance the way that he's bringing it? Oh, yeah, by the way, Jackson State is undefeated this year. So, I mean, yeah, if you want to beat a man, you got to beat the man. Ain't that what Ric Flair used to say? If you want to beat a man, you got to beat the man. So if you tired of Prime being Prime, hey, man, go out there and beat him. Go out there and get the 5-star recruits and things like that. And another thing, if I'm a young African-American male and Deion Sanders walks into my front room wearing the hat to the side, wearing the gold chain, wearing some nice Air Jordans or whatever it is he's wearing, I can relate to that. And I feel like he can relate to me. So why wouldn't I want to play for a guy like that? Why wouldn't I want to go play my butt off for a guy like that?
So, Hugh, another thing that I really love about Coach Prime is that a lot of people sometimes want to be a star. And Eddie Robinson is a star in the SWAC. But the thing is, some people aren't mega stars. For you to come back, sometimes you need a mega star, sometimes you need a superstar, and that's what Deion did to the SWAC. A superstar came in and he brought everything that his name brings with it. And that's helping the whole conference. And, you know, obviously some people are going to hate, but, you know, sometimes people hate him because they can't get in. That's what, because they hating outside of the club.
Because you can't get in. You know what they say? This is how I look at it. When they say the tide lifts all boats, or the rising tide lifts all boats, he's done. Dude, listen, Ryan, I watch college football every Saturday like everybody else does. Do you know how surprised I am to see Bethune-Cookman and Prairie View A&M on television on Saturday doing prime time? That is a big deal for somebody that went to HBCU. You know, the only time I played on TV was when we played on BET. And, you know, everybody ain't got BET. Everybody ain't watching BET. So I had a chance to play college football at a high level on BET. That was like it for me. You got these kids playing on CNN. You got these kids playing in arenas and in venues that they've never played in before. It's a beautiful thing, and you owe that all to Deion and what he's been able to do for HBCUs. You see Stephen A. Smith out there. I know he went to an HBCU too. I think he went to Winston-Salem, if I'm not mistaken. He has on his HBCU swag. He's supporting HBCUs. Now, I'm not saying that he never did before. That's not the message I'm trying to relay, but it's become cool to wear HBCU gear, no matter what school it is. As long as it's HBCU, you see Fred Taylor wearing it. Fred Taylor went to Florida. You see guys wearing HBCU gear all the time that didn't go to HBCUs. I'm not mad at them. If you're wearing gear from an HBCU and that's how you feel, then I'm happy for you, because now somebody that doesn't know about HBCUs is going to ask questions, going to say, hey, what is that school? Where is that at? You know, and you get a chance to educate people, because the one thing that used to irritate me like no other when people talked about HBCUs, they said it was because, you know, why you have HBCUs? Why are you trying to be inclusive or exclusive? Like, no, dude, it wasn't like that. We formed HBCUs back in the day because we weren't allowed to go to the Power 5 schools. We weren't allowed to go to the PWIs. We had to go to our own university because nobody wanted to go to school with us. And so that's why you had the Ed Too Tall Jones and guys like that, the Walter Paytons and guys of that ilk that went to HBCUs, because they weren't allowed to go to these Power 5 conference schools. And they had to play at HBCUs. And now, you know, people are just starting to wake up and realize that these HBCUs, and the one thing about HBCU, you're not saying that other schools don't want you to get your education, but the teachers at HBCUs, since the classes are smaller, they're going to force you, and they're going to work with you to help you get your education. That's the biggest thing about it, man. You're going to graduate with a degree.
I can agree with that. My best friend went to HBCU, and one thing that he told me was that his teachers were like really tough on him because they knew him. Well, I loved Ohio State, but I've had classes where there were 900 students in a class. And my best friend, he didn't have to deal with anything like that, and he ended up graduating on time. I ended up, going to college a little bit.
Oh, no, we all, hey, listen, man, we all did. But listen, this is the thing. It's because we know what we look like. When you, like, certain times, you know what you're looked at as an athlete. You know, a guy that's going to come in and help the program. And HBCU is like, listen, no, you're going to have a degree, so if that doesn't work out for you, that you'll have a chance to go out and do something else. And that's the beautiful thing about it, man. That's why, with my son, he wanted to go to a big school. And I said, listen, you got a chance to go to Morehouse. Like, that's a good school. That's a great alumni base. And he's been on the dean list, and I'm proud of him because he's doing extremely well there right now. Not playing football, but, he's getting some good grades, and that's all I can be happy about there. He's going to HBCU, and he's getting some good grades.
Hey, Hugh Douglas, awesome stuff, man. Make sure you're checking them out. 92.9 The Game in Atlanta. Every day you hear why. Awesome stuff, man. Appreciate you joining us.
Anytime, fellas. Have a great day. Have a great day.
Going to be a fun run-up for him there in Athens this week with the Vols.
Oh, it's going to be, it's going to be bananas. I'm not moving around it, man. It's going to be ridiculous up there. It's going to be bananas. I'm not going up there. I'll watch it on TV.
I'll take your place happily. I'd love to get between the hedges just once in my life. Anywho, Jackson State isn't the only team mounting a comeback in college football. The Vols are in the comeback trail in the SEC as well, just like we're talking about. That's next.
Don't call it a comeback.
Okay, 5-0, like I promised, it's time for some other comeback stories in the news we need to give a quick look to this week. This is the Check Down. Like we mentioned, Tennessee football is making its big comeback this season. After beating Bama 2 weeks ago in a win against ranked Kentucky this weekend, the Vols have their highest rankings since the days of T. Martin and Peyton Manning. Shazier, do the number 2 ranked Vols have enough to beat the Georgia Bulldogs this Saturday?
I'm going to get straight to the point and tell you, yes, I think they do. They are the highest scoring team in college football. Obviously, Georgia is known for their defense. Their offense is always a little suspect. Their offense is good this year. Georgia has a good tight end. But to me, I just think that Tennessee has enough firepower to end up beating them. And if Tennessee beats Georgia, then Tennessee plays Alabama again in the national championship. So I kind of want to see a Tennessee-Alabama game again. But I think they have enough. Their defense worried me. Their defense worries me because they give up a lot of points. But if you put up more points, then you give up. You always win.
That is how it works. I'm pretty sure about that. Meantime, internet tycoon turned professional boxer Jake Paul beat former MMA superstar Anderson Silva by decision to improve to 6-0 as a pro. People love to hate Jake Paul, and I get it, but it's hard to deny that Paul and his brother make headlines every time they step into the ring. 5-0, is Jake Paul's success sparking a comeback for boxing?
The boxing world needs a comeback. And obviously, it's a different form of boxing. It's more, he's a professional now, and it's more recreational. But I think they are making a comeback to boxing because a lot of people are watching boxing now, and just because they want to see Jake Paul lose. It's kind of like watching basketball and wanting to see Golden State Warriors lose. It's like they're so good and they keep winning. And they talk so much smack, but they keep winning. And that's how Floyd Mayweather was. He was so good. He riled people up, but he kept winning. And I think that's kind of what is happening with Jake Paul and Logan Paul. I wasn't a big fan of them at first, and the reason why is because they're brownies. But I actually love what they're doing. They talk smack. They're very confident, but they back it up. Obviously, the people that they're boxing are professionals. They're not all the way boxers, but they're professionals. But at the end of the day, most professional boxers, their first 10 to 15 fights, the people they're fighting aren't that good. So he's actually fighting people that have a big name. So he's bringing crowd appeal. And that's what boxing is all about, is putting two people together that people want to see fight. And that's what the Pauls are doing. So I really love what they're doing. And then they're also allowing other people underneath them to jump in on the fights, like Le'Veon Bell and some other people that want to start getting into the boxing world as well. And this is a way that you can get into the boxing world and not have been boxing since you're 3 or 4 years old. So I love what they're doing. They're bringing more attention to the boxing world so people can watch Logan and Jake. But then when big-time fights like Gervonta Davis or Ryan Garcia or Earl Spence or, Bud Crawford, when those guys fight, it brings way more attention because you see Logan and Jake, when they fight, they're good fighters. They know what they're doing. But when you actually watch one of the guys who are the top in the world like Canelo's, you can see the difference. But you see how Jake is constantly progressing on his way there. So I think they're definitely bringing more attention to the game, the sport of boxing.
Hey, all sports, like good movies, have a good villain in it, and the Pauls are that. The most publicized comeback of this NFL offseason was Tom Brady, who retired, then he unretired to make a run at an 8th Super Bowl run with the Bucs. But unfortunately for Tom, aka the GOAT, the Bucs are 3-5 and they've lost 3 straight. Shazier, do you think the GOAT is regretting his decision to come back this season?
Man, Tom Brady, every time I look at him, he seems more and more like he's regretting this decision. Even the way that he responds, when you see him as he's talking to his teammates, it's like he's yelling at them. And that seems like somebody that's regretting the decision that they're making. And then I'm not going to even talk about his personal life because obviously everybody wants to talk about his personal life, but that has something to do with his decision to come back. And when you decide to do something and you understand that you will never be able to do this again, I understand why he came back. Because once you play the game of football, in the moment you say, hey, I can't play anymore, it's no going back. And Tom Brady understands that. He's 45 years old. He understands that once I stop, I can't go back. And for me, as a football player, I loved every single moment of playing. But one thing I can't do is I can't go back and play. And I wish I could. But Tom Brady has control over that, and most people don't have control over that. So most people were like, man, why would he go back and play? It's not like a regular job. It's not like a lawyer. It's not like a doctor. It's not like a photographer. Once you say you want to stop, you can't just be like, in 2 years, let me get back to it. When you're a professional football player, once you stop, it's over. And I understand Tom Brady knows that. So that's why he decided to come back. But he decided to come back to a winning team, and that's what they're not doing right now. And every team that Tom Brady's played on since he's been in the NFL has always had a pretty good line and a pretty good defense, and his O-line is really bad this year. His defense, they're stepping up, but if his O-line is bad and Tom Brady can't play like Tom Brady, then it's a whole different dynamic. And so at the beginning of the season, I would say that he was really hopeful. He understood what was going on. He understood he's older. This is his last go-round. But as the season constantly progressed, he's like, man, why am I doing this? It almost seems like he's under a lot of stress right now, and that can definitely make somebody want to regret the decision that they made. Yes,
I hear you. You can't go on a long trip and then decide later to come back to football. Aaron Rodgers, he went on a long trip, but not that kind of a trip. Anyway, let's move on. Call of Duty is back. Modern Warfare 2 was released this week, a reboot of the original game that came out in 2009. 5-0, how much of a distraction are video games for NFL players? We've heard some talk about one, Kyler Murray specifically.
Yeah, so video games can definitely be a distraction. I play a lot of video games. I was even on the video game last night until about 2 a.m. I'm going to be completely honest with you. And I need to work on that. But I would say video games are the distraction, and that's a prime example of myself. I'm not playing anymore. But once you understand how important it is, it just depends on who the guy is. TJ Watt plays a lot of video games. I play video games with him, but he doesn't seem distracted at all. While Kyler Murray, he's a quarterback, so people expect more from Kyler. People expect him to understand and not make as many mistakes because he's a quarterback. So they would think video games are a distraction. It just depends on who the guy is. For me, I played video games when I came home because they allowed me to unload. They allow me to get rid of a lot of stress. If I wanted to curse somebody out or I wanted to get mad, I can do that during the video game. When you're on defense, you can do the same thing in practice as well or in the games. But it depends on who the guy is. If it's a young guy that loves to play video games, he's not in his playbook, it can be very distracting. But if it's an older guy like TJ Watt, very focused, take care of all his business, then he plays the game, it just depends on who the guy is. But video games can be distracting because they allow you to get away from the real world.
All right, let's get into it, Shazier. This show is all about comebacks. The show White Lotus is back on HBO about a vacation resort in Italy. In the first season of the show, a hotel worker uses a guest's luggage like a toilet. 5-0, what's the best prank or rookie hazing you've ever pulled in a locker room?
So I've definitely seen some things happen, and these were kind of cruel, but it was cool. And these happen more because the guy was being a butthole. So we told him, hey, you have to get the rookie dinner. I mean, not the rookie dinner. You have to get the donuts. You have to get the donuts, and you have to put the pads back. And the guy was just rebellious. He didn't want to do it. So one of the veterans on the team decided to popcorn his whole car, like his whole car, with butter, his whole car. So if you open your car door, and the first thing that came out of his car door was popcorn, like from the roof to the floor. And for people that don't understand that, if you put popcorn with butter all over your car, it messes up your entire inside. Like your whole car interior is destroyed. And then another time, the rookies didn't want to really pay attention to the veterans. So it was one rookie, he didn't listen to his group. So what the veterans decided to do was they took the keys to all the rookies on the team and they locked them up for 3 days. So they didn't have a key to their house, and they didn't have a key to their cars. So guys had to have somebody pick them up and either sleep at each other's house who had an extra key, or carpool together until the guy actually folded and did what the veterans wanted to do. So imagine not having your house and car keys. And, you know, this was like, now everything's in the digital era where you can just type in your code into your house. It's not like that anymore. And you can just turn your phone on with your car. It's not like that anymore. Like, it's like that now. It wasn't like that when I played. So they took their keys and their house keys. So imagine you couldn't get in your house, you couldn't get in your car. And the only way you would have to is if a rookie had 2 cars. And most rookies didn't have 2 cars. I don't think that's very nice that you butter popcorn Terrell Edmonds' car like that. But you did what you did. And no, that wasn't me.
Oh, I was right with my guess though.
I'm a very it wasn't Terrell either. I'm a very kind guy.
You're a man of peace.
Me personally, I'm a man of peace. You know, I'm gonna ask over and over and over. You don't listen to me, I'm just gonna go to the guy upstairs. You know, is Coach Tomlin, then is, you know, my God, you know what I'm saying?
Tomlin, then God, okay.
This guy, you know, and when it comes to football, you know, so then I just, hey, Coach, you know, it sounds like I'm snitching, but hey, he's not acting right. We might need to find this guy. And would you rather get your car popcorn or would you rather get fined?
Well, you know? I know this. We once did that to my friend in college. We hid his house keys, and then he had to break into his own home, and then somebody called the police on him. So things can get sideways with that. Anywho, that's a wrap on this episode of Don't Call It a Comeback. Good times as always. We thank Hugh Douglas for his appearance. Dynamite stuff today, 5-0.
Yeah, man, that was great. Make sure to follow, rate, review the show wherever you're listening, and check us out on Don't Call It a Comeback on YouTube for the full episode, and see you all next week.
In other words, come back.
Don't call it a comeback. I've been waiting on this moment my whole life. Can't call it a comeback. Everybody to your feet, make arenas rise. Yeah, I'm saying from the left to right, we get it on tonight. We do it all, but we don't back down. Just give me one shot, one chance, I'ma take it. Fixing up the game, but these records I keep on breaking.